Okay, so welcome to today's class on the cultural context in The Great Gatsby. As you know, The Great Gatsby is one of the texts on this year's comparative course, and cultural context is one of the modes for comparison. Okay, when you think of cultural context, think of the world of the text and how that world affects the people within it. It could be under the role of men and women, maybe racism, the role of religion, social status, money, tradition, all those things, how it affects them as they move through their life. Okay, so we're going to start the video. Okay, so we're going to start with the setting. The physical location of where people live tells you a lot about the characters. Okay, it tells you a lot about the world as well. So we're going to begin with West Egg. Okay, this is where Gatsby lives. Look at the words that are associated with West Egg. Vulgarity, new money, filled with celebrities, theatrical people, and materialism. Materialism, okay, Gatsby is guilty of materialism. He wants to acquire as much wealth and show his wealth in order to woo Daisy. Okay, so in the world they live in, he thinks that in order to win the heart of a woman, he must have money, he must have houses, he must have fancy cars, all the trappings of wealth he wants to show. But it is very, very important that you know the distinction between East Egg and West Egg. Okay, so East Egg is the opposite of where Gatsby lives. It's across the way, and that's where Tom and Daisy live. Look at the words associated with East Egg. Pomp and ceremony, old money, social status, opulent, exclusive and steeped in tradition. Daisy and Tom's house, a white palace. So look at this, new money versus old money. So in most texts, social status is about money. In this text, the author's highlighting that it's not just about money. New money is not as valuable as old money. So even though Gatsby has all the money in the world, he cannot challenge Tom on this. Okay, as Tom says to him, he's Mr. Nobody from nowhere. And that you can see the effect that has on Gatsby. It knocks him back. Okay, so old money, Tom is Tom Buchanan from Chicago. Okay, he's got a tradition. His family have always had money. And he carries himself in a way that he shows that. Okay, New York is very different. New York, the city, Manhattan, the social variety and vitality. Okay, that means that people from different social classes can mix in New York, and it's important because that's where Tom takes Myrtle, his mistress, the woman he's having an affair with. They seem to be on a level playing field when they go to New York. It's racy, adventurous, it's light, colour, anonymity. Okay, New York offers anonymity, whereas East Egg, everyone knows who is who. Okay, so anonymity, you can hide the fact of your family. So Gatsby may have been better off in New York than trying to step into West Egg or trying to step into the company of those in East Egg. Okay, the Valley of the Ashes is important. When you think of the Valley of Ashes, you should think of George and Myrtle Wilson. Okay, it's a grotesque symbol, death and decay. It's a wasteland. Okay, that's very symbolic, the wasteland. It's as if the people there are wasted, their lives are going to waste. It represents the lower social classes who are denied access to money and success. So think about this, the Valley of the Ashes versus East Egg. Tom Buchanan can just take George Wilson's wife because he has money, because he can offer her what George can't. He has money, he has success, he has everything that George cannot have. Okay, then the Midwest. The Midwest of America was associated with an upright, conservative lifestyle and strong family values. Now, when we look at East Egg and West Egg, family values basically don't exist. Conservatism does not exist, okay? They have very loose morals, which we'll see later in this slideshow, okay? So there's a contrast there between where Nick's home is and where he's moved to, okay? It's one of the things as a narrator that he struggles to comprehend, okay? So social class we talked about, and the first word is money, but we know that it's not the only thing. Money is important in this world, but we also see the distinction between old and new money. Tom has an advantage over Gatsby because Gatsby has no links to the upper classes. As Tom tells him, he's Mr. Nobody from nowhere. Okay, and you can see the effect that has on him. It just knocks him back because he's trying his hardest to build this profile. He even changes his name, but he's still Mr. Nobody from nowhere. Gatsby attempts to use phrases like old sport to pretend he comes from a privileged background because he knows that despite all the money, he is at a disadvantage. He also changes his name to create a new persona for himself. He also pretends he goes to Oxford or that he's an Oxford graduate when in fact that's a lie because Oxford is synonymous with privilege and he just tries to break into that bracket, and it jokes you can't break into that bracket. And I think that's what the author's trying to show, is that it's impossible. No matter how much money and wealth you acquire, you're just not getting into that club. Okay, Tom is contrasted with George, who is poor and lives in the Valley of the Ashes. The fact that Tom can have an affair with his wife shows Tom's opinion of the man. It's basically, he's got a wife who I think's good looking, so I'm just going to take her because I can. Because I have more money than him. My status is better than his, so I can just have what I want. Tom represents everything that is wrong in this society. Okay? There are 3 classes in the text, and this is very good. Old money, new money, and no money. Okay, so think about it. Old money, Tom and Daisy. New money, Gatsby. And the no money, the Wilsons. Think of the characters that fall into each category and how their lives unfold as a result of their place in the system. So if you think about it, at the end, the people who kind of carried on with their lives were the Buchanans, because they came from old money. The rest who tried their hardest, everything falls apart for them. Okay, we'll just move on to the gender and the role of men and women. Okay, this comes up in nearly all of the text on the comparative course to some extent, and in this one it's very, very clear. You should have a lot of points to make on the different the gender roles, and the role of men and women is very, very clear in this text. Okay, look at Tom. He's the archetypal alpha male. He's aggressive, he's rich, he sees women as inferior. He's hypocritical. How's he hypocritical? He has numerous affairs with numerous women, but when Daisy, he finds out Daisy has an affair, he loses it. Okay, so very hypocritical. He's the football player, star football player in his youth. As Nick says at one point, he achieved everything by 21, so that everything after there was like an anticlimax for him. Okay, the Gatsby is very different to Tom. But in terms of the role of men and women, he still feels he has to show Daisy he must provide for her. And he's not doing that on a false premise. Daisy left Gatsby for Tom on the basis that he did have more money and he could provide a better life for her. So the women seem to think it is the role of the man to provide for them. Okay, Tom is a compulsive womanizer with a preference for lower class women who he treats with contempt and violence. Okay, so Myrtle is in a lower bracket to him, but he seems to want women like that because he can treat them whatever way he wants. So he breaks Myrtle's nose. If you remember the scene in the apartment where Myrtle keeps mentioning Daisy's name, and he just punches her. And that should be a point that you'll make in terms of the role of men and women, that Myrtle could do nothing about that, okay? In fact, she still kept going on with her affair with him. It was as if he had the right to do that. Daisy complains he has hurt her little finger. He seems to think physical violence against women is okay. So, if you're asked about how the cultural context affects people, Myrtle and Daisy are affected a lot by the cultural context, because men can do what they want to them and they have no comeback. They can't ring the police. There doesn't seem to be any penalty for Tom for doing any of these things, because he is rich, and because of who he is, he seems to be able to do whatever he wants. Okay, the men in the text are supposed to provide for the women. George lost Myrtle to Tom because he couldn't give her the life she wanted. Okay, and Gatsby thinks that by accumulating wealth, he will win Daisy back. Okay, morals, a sense of right and wrong. In a text, it's important to know the morals of the characters, and the characters here we can see morally are not good people. It's a post-World War I society where people abandoned religion and conservative values and replaced them with materialism and loose morals. Okay, if you think about most texts, religion usually plays a role, and here it doesn't play any role. And I think the author's highlighting the fact that religion does not play a role, and therefore what happens when religion is gone and chaos reigns in many ways and materialism took over. Gatsby's parties are the symbol of that materialism and the loose morals. People are having affairs with whoever they want. Marriage is not seen as something that is sacrosanct. Okay, marriage seems something that people can just do whatever they want with whoever they want. Affairs like Tom's with Myrtle were acceptable. Gatsby is involved in criminal activity and it seems to be accepted. Okay, the only people it's not accepted by are Tom, because it's not his old money. He doesn't agree with it because he doesn't work for his money. He just has money. Okay, Wolfsheim is a criminal. Bootlegging, gambling, fixing sporting events were all part of this world. Corruption was rife in this world. People at Gatsby's party spread scandalous rumours about him. Okay, people didn't care. There was no basis for a lot of these rumours, but they went with them nonetheless. Gatsby holds lavish parties and spends ridiculous amounts of money in an effort to woo Daisy. Okay, so if you think about it morally, is it okay to spend massive amounts of money to have a party while there are people starving? No, it's not. There's no sense of helping the poor in this text. It's all about how much money and wealth can we show. Tom treats Wilson badly because he knows he can get away with it, because he needs his custom. Okay, basically, I can treat you whatever way I want because you need me. Okay, in fact, I can even have your wife if I want. Okay, that's how he treats Wilson. Okay, a continuation here you'll see next of the gender. Okay, women are seen as possessions by the men in the text, and the women do not seem to care about this. In fact, they seem to play along, and Daisy recognises this, that if she plays the fool, if she carries on, that she'll be looked after. Okay, so you'll see something similar in A Doll's House when we look at that later in the week in videos. Okay, she plays along. Daisy is viewed by Tom as his possession, and by Gatsby as some sort of a dream that he wants to fulfill. So there's a question for you. Is Gatsby in love with Daisy, or is he in love with the thought of Daisy? Is he in love with this version of Daisy that he had in his head as he came back from war? Okay, is she the woman of his dreams, or is she a dream? Okay, an important point here about Jordan. She's independent, and Tom disapproves. Of course he does. The alpha male disapproves, saying her family oughtn't to let her run around the country this way. Basically, she shouldn't be running around. She should have a man telling her what to do. Okay, so think about the morals and values there as well, and the role of men and women. Basically, Jordan is independent and he frowns upon it. Men, the patriarchy, don't want to see women being independent. Okay, Myrtle accepts that Tom broke her nose and does nothing about it. Okay, readers in today's world would find that shocking. They would find that unbelievable that a man would break a woman's nose and get away with it, that she continues to have an affair. She could have broken that off because of it, but doesn't. It's as if he's allowed to do that because he's a man. Think about it in terms of if this was in 2020, what would have happened? Would it be the same reaction? And of course it definitely would not be. The women in the text are described as girls throughout. Now that's an important point, and it's just a little point you can make in any essay that you're doing. So regardless of age, they're referred to as girls. So Daisy and Myrtle and Jordan, they're girls. But the men are never described as boys. And it can be compared to A Doll's House in the way that Helmer speaks to Nora. And he always uses the word little in front of everything. Just a demeanour in a very subtle way. So by the author describing them as girls, he's kind of showing that subtle distinction between men and women. The men were men and they were girls. Okay? Now, religion. In a lot of texts, religion plays a key role, as it says here, but in this text, it doesn't exist or barely exists. Okay, is this the reason the morals are so loose? Is the author making a point that in the absence of religion, that chaos reigns? And I suppose in this text, chaos does reign a little bit. We end up with a couple of deaths. We end up with affairs, marriages broken. As the author suggesting, the lack of conservative values leads to chaos. So, if you think about the other texts in the course, especially Brooklyn, for example, where religion plays such a key role in terms of morals, you see Eilish in her boarding house where only certain type of girls are allowed the front room in case they would happen to have men back. Okay, so completely different scenario here, and it's a great contrast to use in your essays when you're linking the two. Okay, so in A Doll's House you won't see religion either, but here very little, but there is a mention. So the only mention of God we see is from George, who tells us that his wife can't hide from the eyes of God. That's the only mention. Now, there is a suggestion here, and we'll look at it. Does the author replace God with the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg? So is Dr. T.J. Eckleburg's eyes, are they God? Or is he implying that capitalism is the new God? So the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg is an old advertisement looking down on the characters. Throughout the text, it's mentioned at various points throughout. Is it that the eyes of capitalism, which they see as their God, and in many ways, money is a god to Gatsby and the likes of Tom because they value it above all else? So that's a question. Again, it's an interpretation. It's up to you. You can make that interpretation. Okay. So marriage. The last one we're going to look at now is marriage. Marriage presented in a very poor light in this text. Think about marriage in Brooklyn, how different it is, and the value that they place on marriage. So all the characters are having affairs and seem to be married for convenience rather than love. Okay, so I mentioned there about Brooklyn and the way marriage, Eilish marries for love rather than convenience. She had the opportunity to marry for convenience, but she didn't. Okay, so if you think about Daisy, why did she marry Tom? Why did she leave Gatsby's love and marry Tom? It was for convenience. It was for security. It was for money. Okay, women seem to want a man with money. Myrtle, she married George. On the day of their wedding, when she realised that he was wearing a suit that was borrowed, she fell to the floor in tears. Okay, she realised that, and it shows she did love him when she thought he had money, or that he was a man, but as soon as she realises how poor that he is, she doesn't want to be with him anymore. Wants a man. There are no happy marriages in the text with Tom at the end. Is this showing us that marriage has some value, or is it an old money over the shadowy nature of Gatsby's money? Here's a question. Had Gatsby's money been legitimate? Had he legitimately made his way to the top? Would she have stayed with Tom, or would she have went with her heart and left with Gatsby? Okay, we can't answer that question. That's up to you, again, interpretation. Okay, so we're just going to recap. The physical locations in the text represent the social positions of the residents. Money is viewed as a means of gaining status, but it doesn't guarantee entry into the upper classes. Okay, so no matter how much money Gatsby gets, he can't enter Tom's club. Tom's a member of that club, and it's an elite club. You have to be there for a long time to get in. Men and women are treated very differently in the text. Okay, as we saw there, men and women are treated differently. Men can do what they want. Women must adhere to what the men want. Religion is non-existent, and marriage is seen as a facade. Okay, they're all having affairs. Doesn't seem to be for love. Okay, so if you like the video, if you like the content, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more Leaving Cert English material. Thank you.